So, Ken and Harris, thank you very much. You've created an absolutely wonderful film. It looks great, and it's deep, it's intriguing, and thank you very much for creating a wonderful cinematic experience for us on glorious 65mm film. But before we start digging into the film, to go on the wonderful journey into the Orient Express, you were at Camera Image as well, and Ken, you picked up 2 awards there, I believe, the Krzysztof Kozlowski Award, and the 2 of you picked up a duo award, which is an amazing thing for the director and cinematographer together.
And Ken got an Emmy yesterday too.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you very much.
Is this working?
Well, we got the Dynamic Duo Award. He's Batman, I'm Robin.
So just briefly, tell us about your experiences at Camera Image. What was it like? Because there was certainly a buzz when we arrived on the Monday after you'd been there.
It's a wonderful festival, and I kind of always think that it's such a great thing to have a festival that's so dedicated. It's not about cinematography at Camera Image, it's about filmmaking, and I think that was what was so great for us to participate there. Cinematography is just a part of filmmaking. They celebrate it through that, but I've always said Ken is a brilliant cinematographer, and that's what's great about working with him. And I think that is so wonderful. I think that is a great award, a duo award. Of all the awards, that really, for me, was very special.
It was great. There was a ton of great cinematographers and directors and producers. There, a ton of young people, and we were there for the opening. And the amount of workshops, master classes, discussions around new technology, appreciation of films, just a general sort of celebration of a sort of relish of the whole thing, both kind of considering things, but also what to do. Ton of short films, ton of tiny films, so a lot of creativity was really brought to bear there. It was very, very impressive, and they gave us a fantastic time. They presented our film in 70mm, and it was, as you can imagine, it was they were keen to have that format and the picture really well presented. Bit of a brown trouser moment for us, because we had a lot of very serious individuals there. We're sitting next to Michael Apted and Stephen Goldblatt and Volker Schondorf and all sorts of fancy people, and it was a great thrill, but also a packed house full of students as well, and it was a big celebration of cinema. It was a real pleasure to be there.
Wonderful. And this year it was the 25th anniversary of Camera Image, and all the better for kicking off with this wonderful film that you've made now. You've worked together on 5 occasions. For those in the audience who are not aware of that: Sleuth in 2007, excuse me, Thor 2011, Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit 2014, Cinderella 2015, and of course Murder on the Orient Express. All shot on film. So before we get into why 65mm, why film? Why do you prefer to shoot on film?
Well, it's how I started. When I first started even understanding what directing would be, it was with a great lighting cameraman, Ken Westbury. People might be familiar with that name. He was working for the BBC. I did a television film by Colin Gregg of Virginia Woolf's novel To the Lighthouse, and that was the first time that I started asking questions about film and film cameras and how shots were arranged and what was this process, this magical process, this photochemical process. And then when an education began in that way, just through being curious, and crews and DPs particularly extremely generous, very generous in their sharing of knowledge. I remember I was pretty ignorant now, but I was very ignorant then, asking Ken Westbury what the guy at the side of the camera doing that all the time was doing, and also wondering what those tapes were. Why do they keep having to measuring everything? What is that? So that's how stupid actors can be. Certainly this actor, and so that education went through to the first film that I made, Henry V, which was shot on film without video assist, and where the whole conversation was with the camera operator and the DP and the production of the image was you know, a kind of real combination thing, and so I went through the whole process of you know, working with a work print, and we cut on a moviola and all sorts of ancient dinosaur-y seeming things now. But what it did give you was a real feel for film, you know. So when you made a cut, you know, you got that trim and you could feel it and see it hanging up there, and there was a sense in which cuts that you made, you had a real, you look at a piece of film and you could start to quantify it in terms of seconds, and there was a certain kind of rhythm, a certain kind of relationship to the storytelling that was sort of got into my system. It's the same on the set in terms of the rhythm of the shoot, the loading of film mags, the time that takes, the ritual, the breaking up of or the structuring of the way the day goes that suited me, again, was in the system. I've got nothing against digital, because I've worked as an actor in all sorts of forms across the years now since the sort of digital revolution. But I've always enjoyed film for pictures in the cinema, and in a way now you feel like it's such an unusual thing that frankly I was thrilled but amazed that Fox allowed us to do this and allowed us to do it on 65mm. It's the movement in the negative that I like. It's the sort of it's the texture, it's and it's sort of what I'm used to, so it's what I've enjoyed.
The grain?
For sure, the grain. Do you want to talk? This is now starts getting technical. Over to you, Chief.
Yeah.
I think the grain is again part of maybe a more human aspect to film that I think we both really love. There's certainly something in the procedure and the routine, and I think there's a structure in just the basic form of filmmaking where you have this thing called, well, a really basic principle of observation, contemplation, and action, and it really happens in film that maybe sometimes is lacking if you do not have that discipline in video. So that's almost like a procedural thing that I think is appreciated, but maybe grain is something to do with something closer to human vision. Even human vision is impressionist. You gather information and your brain says that makes movement, that makes that creates a form of space and light and things like that. So those things are interesting to see. How will they eventually be translated to a digital format? Because they will have to at some point. But we take things from it, and maybe the original thing we take from it is that 3 steps of: you observe something in nature, in real life, you think about it, you contemplate it, and then you take an action about it, whether it's you frame it this way or you light it this way. That's a real film discipline, and that's something that I think we have to always take with us in the future.
I also, for me, because obviously I come from a sort of performance-interested perspective, the ritual around the capture creates something of an event. So there is at least in my view, and I think it's more than just nostalgia or a sort of, a desire to be sort of Luddite about it. For me, there's a magic about that gate opening on the side of the camera and the film being threaded through. I see its impact on other actors. I see that there's a sort of ritual. They know there's a finite amount of film in there. So there's a sort of an event about capturing the performance before that's run out. We're not in some open-ended scenario. So there's a kind of, you might even call it theatricality, but I don't mean that translating it in some sort of phony performance, but just that there's a kind of a little kind of, blue touch paper gets lit about all those steps of, turnover, and it is turning over indeed, and you're hearing something, and that's exciting. It produces something different in performance.
So why shoot on 65mm? As obviously, you're no stranger to having shot on 65mm, because of course you starred in and directed Hamlet with Alex Thompson as your cinematographer. In fact, we have some members of the family here. Perhaps we could give you a wave.
Hey, hello. Hiya. Nice to see you.
And also you were in Dunkirk as well, which obviously used large formats. So 2 questions. Firstly, so why 65mm? And second question, did you give Chris Nolan any tips on how to shoot large format?
I wouldn't do that. I tell you. I wouldn't give any tips about anything. But I was very happy to watch him, work in masterful fashion. Quick story about Alex, darling Alex, great DP, wonderful gentleman of the cinema and of life. Just the beautiful ladies in his life over here. He was so funny one morning when we had two adjoining sound stages at Shepperton, A and B stages, and it was one massive composite set. On A stage there was a massive mirrored room, like the inside of a room at Versailles, and where the dock doors were, the sort of joining doors, we built a corridor, and it went all the way through to other palace rooms where we had the King's bedroom. So there was a scene where Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come into the play, and Derek Jacobi as Claudius welcomes them and says, "Look, there's a problem with Hamlet. We'd love you to keep an eye on him and tell us what's wrong with him because we're worried about him, etc., etc." It's about 4 or 5 pages of dialogue, maybe a bit longer than that. And it started with Derek emerging in the bedroom. There was a 360 move in that single bedroom, then out into a corridor. This is with a 65mm camera. On film, and out into the corridor where now there are 7 or 8 people in the scene. They all have lines. Tim Spall's in it, Julie Christie's in it, Rhys Dinsdale's in it. And then they come down the corridor, they do another 360, they start to go into the other stage. So we've now gone the length of an entire stage. Mirrors everywhere, bloody lights everywhere. And then we go into A stage. So now we're in a room full of mirrors. We've got 8 people, and we've got an entire camera crew on a dolly going through both these sound stages. And the scene continues. Now there's 60 fencers in that room. They're all fencing. They've got a fencing match. They have to hit all the moves and everything. And eventually Derek Jacobi and Richard Briers, who comes into the shot, late great Richard Briers, comes into the shot about 4 minutes in. And he has to give some lines, and then they end up on the throne, and two ambassadors come in, and the shot's over. And I kept saying to Alex, we were planning this, and said, and the only thing to remember is we're not going to cut, Alex. It's all going to be one continuous shot. And he kept looking. It was always a slow smile because he assumed that I was kidding. And we rehearsed it. We laid it out on the morning when we started to shoot it. And he was a fantastically economical, brilliant DP, very conscious of performance and stuff, and very swift. But we'd just given him something of a headache, and I said, it made me laugh when it took us 3 hours to rehearse it, 3 hours just to rehearse it with everybody. And I said, so how long to light it? He said 8 hours. I said, I'm sure you can do better than that, Alex. But he went away, he had his sort of head in his hands. Anyway, about 3 hours later, during which time we'd blown the substation at Shepperton. We just literally, all of Spelthorne went out because there was so many lights being used. Both those sound stations were packed with lights. We didn't confess to it at all. We said there was be some kind of problem with drainage or something. It wasn't a bunch of turns putting on Shakespeare. But we eventually we got to it, and it was an absolutely amazing thing to do. And he made it magical. He made everything work. Everybody hit their light, and the only terrifying thing about it was that Richard Briers was so scared, because he was on right at the end of the shot, that he was going to mess it up. That it made me think, I don't know if you're aware of that shot at the beginning of Touch of Evil, Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. It's another massive long crane shot with Charlton Heston, and it ends up in a booth at a border control with a fellow who's trying to let Charlton Heston through. And that guy at the end of that shot got so nervous, and it was so late in the night, it was so cold that he couldn't speak and his teeth started to chatter. And Orson Welles made him turn around so that he couldn't see, so he could loop everything afterwards, because the guy was so nervous. We did the same thing with Richard Briers. Richard had to walk in almost hunched and backwards, so that, because he said it's all very well, because we were watching the shot inside just a bit of set that he was standing in before he made his entrance into the shot. So he knows, we're all going, yes, we've got it. First minute, great. Second minute, great, Alex, nice. Oh, he's hit the mark. Oh, fantastic. Oh, great. Oh, the focus is fantastic. Brilliant. And several times he had a bit of a snafu, to which, and he was a sweet and civilized guy, but did turn to me after about 6 takes and said, I can't fucking do this, love. I said, all right, we'll turn around. Orson Welles said, it's fine if you turn around. So he turned around, and we got by about 6 seconds. And once he turned around, of course, he was fine. His confidence came back, and he was brilliant. But it was, Mr. Thompson held his nerve, and he held his nerve for the whole of the film, in which he did a brilliant job. So why did I do 65mm? Yeah. Because Alex Thompson did it then so well, and I thought, hand it over to the young maestro here.
Yeah. Oh, well, I thank you. Obviously, there's something in the 65mm frame, which is it's double the real estate of the 35mm frame, that gives a special connection between what you see on screen with the audience. Perhaps you could, Harris, you could give us your thoughts on that.
I mean, it's definitely double the real estate, but we had triple the real estate with all our actors, so we wanted to get them all in, and in one shot. And I think, again, the human eye works that way. You're taking in all this information, and I think that's an important thing. It seems at 65 that the frame around it all disappears, and you're the glass in the window. And we really wanted that. We wanted a very immersive kind of form of cinema here. IMAX is really different with the top, the 4x3 top and bottom. It can move and shift, and I think what the amazing thing in Dunkirk was that. But System 65, that kind of 240 65, it's really precise, and Poirot is so precise. It just all seemed to be part of the story. I think that was what was great for us. He sees everything, so we had to see everything. You observe everything. You're right there. It all seemed to make sense for us for this picture.
Because you get scale, you get the chance to do the scopy shots, however they're achieved, of the train leaving Istanbul station or being in the Alps or whatever. But also in a film like this, a big epic part of 65mm is the human face. And if the crux of the story is about whether someone is lying or not, one of the things we were talking about it earlier, one of the things I enjoy particularly is you get somebody like, well, any one of them, but I'll Penelope Cruz, for the sake of argument, in the interview that Poirot has where he places her in the kitchen and we intercut between her and Willem Dafoe and Manuel Garcia Rulfo, there's just this sort of language of guilt. She holds the gaze, but the camera holds the gaze. You kind of see everything. Obviously, she's a beautiful woman, but she's also playing this zealot who somehow sort of contained some of that glamour. But those little eye movements, just little flickers in the eye, and also just what Alex Byrne did with the costumes, with that cross and with Michelle Pfeiffer's scarf or whatever, in a thriller where part of what Agatha Christie does is present as many possibilities, more suspects than you would normally have. She keeps that dancing, but then within the life of each suspect, the sense that anything could make a difference. Anything, the way they tie, whatever's in Derek Jacobi's buttonhole, or her. We wait while she looks at Poirot and she just blinks. The way people blink sometimes when perhaps they're telling a lie, or they're so innocent that they're so nervous that they blink and look as though they might tell a lie. And this sort of forensic gaze of the 65mm gives that sort of sense of detail and texture. And for me, it also started with this is the scopy format, saturated color, and large ensemble story that I started to go and see with my parents at the cinema when I was 7, 8, 9 years old. Big stories. A key influence on this as a filmmaker was an American director called John Sturges, who, amongst many other things, made, for instance, a movie called Bad Day at Black Rock, a Spencer Tracy film, 1955, and it has a fantastic opening sequence, train in graphic, John Ford kind of Monument Valley Western, very graphic, so huge shots, but it's horizontals and, it's very kind of mathematical in a way, and as well as having a sort of natural quality, so a strange combination of the pair. Train comes up to one horse town, leaves, man in black gets down, turns around, one horse town, there's been a murder. And that sort of feeling of all of that vastness leading down to something very, very small that was going to be very human and very violent. Feels like the sort of dynamic, the breathing in and out that a picture like this can have. You've got a massive train, and then you're into that narrow corridor, and that picture gives you, that format gives you the detail in both regards. And on a daft level, just when you pick up the celluloid itself, it's so, comparative to other people, it's so huge, it feels so fantastic. It's almost like a sort of symbol for how much more or how different kind of value you're going to get. The guys at Photochem gave me some some frames from the movie that just I thought I was going to cry. I was so excited. So they'll be framed.
So can we take a little detour to New Zealand as part of the next part of our conversation? Because, of course, before you shot a single frame of the live action, you had to work out the backgrounds, didn't you? And that's quite a process to have done that. Mm-hmm. And that started some, 8 or 9 months before you started production for real Longcross.
Sure.
But yeah, can you just briefly take us to that process? I mean, I thought those backgrounds looked absolutely wonderful. They work wonderfully well, and to me, it's a wonderful marriage of new technologies and old technologies. But
well, one beat before Harris talks about New Zealand, is just that we went through the process of trying to work out, could we shoot this film for real could we go to Istanbul? Could we get the real Orient Express? Could we? And the truth was that we did some experimentation and found that logistically it was so fantastically difficult for obvious reasons, health and safety reasons. Just train networks are, places where accidents can happen. Yeah, and so the idea that we're going to get 12 movie stars and they're all going to be ready at the same time, and that we're going to get them on a railway car, and it's going to leave Istanbul, and then I'm going to say, because sometimes directors change their mind, I think, I've been told. But so suddenly you say, oh, well, can it come back and do that? No, it can't. It's got to go to, as it were, Milton Keynes and come back down the other line, because there's a thing. So the exercise of can we do it live, could we, should we, will we, can we, and manage all those actors' schedules and be in all of those places became, a non-starter. So we then decided
that we would do a process procedure, process work being, as you all know, a kind of poor man's process. I guess there's a rich man's process somewhere.
This might have been it.
Yeah, this might have been it. But process work meaning that you do not move a vehicle, and you make the backgrounds move, and etc. And it has been used a lot in the past. We've used back projection and film projection, etc. We decided to use LED projection technology, what is known as an enhanced environments that VER kind of provided for us. We scoped it out, we did some tests, and we actually figured out that we could use an entire carriage, no more than that, but we could do an entire carriage and pretend that we were moving using our either LED enhanced environments and in combination with our hydraulics on the train and certain atmos that we would create to do all of this. But we'd have to plan our journey beforehand, shoot our journey beforehand, edit our journey beforehand, and commit to these scenes. And I guess this is part of that kind of procedure of kind of observing, contemplating, and acting on it, and making certain decisions. That was a really fun process. We chose New Zealand because it has a pristine landscape that is devoid of modernity. It even has wooden telephone poles. I mean, apart from it, the kind of the beauty that Transalpine Express has, it's really devoid of anything that's kind of 2016, 2017. It really felt like it was in the 1930s. So I ended up going out there with some cameras, well, about 8 cameras, and a very able crew, and we shot some footage, and then I think we came back with 40 hours that we gave you, Ken.
Yeah, but we'd planned out, because you could do it mood-wise. You say, okay, for this part of the journey, for the scene with Johnny Depp, we should be in the lowlands. Here's when we start getting into the alpine stuff. Here's, we could sort of, do that. And then I guess if this was the flatbed, you had 2 cameras there and 2 here and 2 here, didn't you?
There was 7. There was
all programmed together.
3 to the left, 3 to the right, 1 out the back. Yeah.
I thought you had another one at the front as well.
We
one
did,
inside,
and a witness camera.
One inside looking at a pendulum or something.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. But Ken chose specific to mood and the scene, which was a wonderful thing to offer a director, that they could pick their landscapes before we shot. Because if we did go for a green screen, and the alternative really for us was a green screen, is that we would shoot the cast within an environment and then we would send a second unit afterwards to pick these locations. And they might not match. You wouldn't have that reality for the actors. That was a very, very important thing for us, that we could actually create this environment and they could feel motion sickness. They could feel where they were going. They could feel kind of in the moment, at least. And we made these decisions for them in a way. And we looked like we knew what we were doing, number one. And but I think it was also very rewarding for us. It informed many things. It informed the lighting that you would do in a scene like that. But as you said, you know, you could choose, like, I want an expansive landscape here. A more claustrophobic environment here.
And it was critical for when actors did come onto the train for the first time. It's just much simpler for me to, you know, as I've done numerous times, you get big green screen scenarios where you are constantly explaining and reminding people what is going to be there. There's worry on the actor's part about, you know, the intensity of performance. Is the monster 50 feet high? Is he drooling or whatever? Is that a massive fall down there? And here, literally the first day they came on board and we switched the screens on, switched the footage on, people got motion sickness and also, you know, were genuinely looking out. We had quite long cycles of travel time. I knew it was working when one day, in a slightly tense moment, I thought, Christ, I've got to walk away for a second. I'm just going to walk up the other side of the train and just have a look out at the scenery. And so I thought, Christ, well, I've been taken in, but I've got to look. I've got to stand by the window like you would on a train, you know, because it was still running and it was fantastically, you know, convincing and really, really made such a difference to just not even having to consider that. They were on a train. We were moving through Europe. The special effects, the hydraulics and gimbal, you know, systems were extremely, extremely impressive and programmable, and the technology around all of that was phenomenally impressive. People did a lot of work to get that sort of touch of a button, so that, because the other thing we have is something like this is just, you know, it's a bit of a knee trembler to get 12 movie stars on you know, in that carriage. And they're what Clint Eastwood calls fast startup actors. You want to get them immediately. So we wouldn't call them unless we were ready. So that needed everything ready. So is the program on, are we doing 3 of those judders or 1? And, you know, we practice all that because it's tough walking down a train with a tray and stuff, and you've got to let certain people know that Judi Dench wants to know if that's going to happen when she's walking, etc. Get the environment sorted out, get the lighting sorted out. Light a lot with, you know, stand-ins, and then I wanted to capture a happening. I wanted the scene in the kind of story where it can feel like so-called heritage filmmaking, where people may feel it's expected in some way. We wanted the performance part of it to have a spontaneity and a kind of you know, a sort of event quality, not only for the audience but also for the actors. It was a conscious attempt to rarely rehearse. The very first time we got them all together, they sat down and we said turn over, so that also they had that sense that it's going to be a bit like this, you know, you're going to have to be ready, you're going to have to pass the ball, you've got to know your lines, and nobody wanted to be the one who messed up a line before Judi Dench was going to speak, you know, she became like the den mother and the talisman. When they all met for the first time, when they met for the first time, I swear to God, they were all, I'd got everybody off the train because I was quietly bricking myself, having done everything, and I thought, oh Christ, no, here we go. I'm gonna have to say, yeah, we get this, but it'll be good. So I'm there. We've got everything ready, everything set, and I saw them all meeting just down below the steps of the Orient Express, and saw the curious thing of people literally walking up to Judi and going, you know, little curtsy, because obviously she played the Queen so many times, and of course she always says the best part about a job is the moment when you say yes. You get the offer and you say yes. Everything after that is a decline. So on day one, she's always like a 7-year-old. She looks like the person whose mum hasn't come to school to pick her up. So that's happening while people are going up and curtsying to her. They're all so nervous. It's like absolutely like the first day at school. And then the first person up the steps walks in the door towards me is Michelle Pfeiffer, and she's crying. I thought, Christ, what have we done? Jesus, the first one on. I said, are you all right? She said, I've just met Judi Dench. So she was so sort of worked up, and then they were all kind of, sort of overexcited. And so we wanted to capture that. So everything about the technical preparation was also trying to be in tandem with how do we find the best way to capture this unusual event of all these people being in the same room at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I think that effect is spectacular.
And that's in camera, Ron.
That's
really
not.
Good.
Yeah, I know. It looks really good. Looks really, really good. So briefly, because we have our friends from Panavision here, you used some very special cameras, didn't you, on this production? Can you tell us about those, Harris?
Well, we used the 2 SoundSync cameras that exist in 65mm, the Panaflex Platinum System 65s, and we had 2 MOS cameras and a spare that we threw around every now and again. It's a really special privilege to do 65mm. You feel a certain kind of reverence to it, and you feel a certain responsibility to not F up. It is an unforgiving format, and it's a really rewarding format. And I think we all stepped up to it in a way that we've never had to as a crew. We had a great crew. I have to do a little bit of a
yes.
I do shout outs.
Yeah. Are in the audience this evening?
We had Roger Pierce and Luke Redgrave on A and B camera. We had Hamish Dwayne Ditmas doing our second unit and some C camera. We had Stamos Triandafillos struggling with a steady cam. Bless him for it all. We had Dean Thompson and Pete Burns, focus pulling. Abby Catter was our loader. Malcolm Hughes was our key grip. Julian White was our gaffer. Daniel Lowe was our rigging gaffer. They all worked very hard on kind of. It's a demanding shoot. We really kind of appreciated it. I can't. That's the bit that it's hard to express. You really feel like you've got to be committed. You've got to do your homework. You've got to be prepared, and it felt kind of worthwhile with this cast. I think at the end of the day, it was the cast that made it all feel like it was a worthwhile kind of agonizing experience.
Well, it was there was a tremendous crew, and also because they were uncomplaining. I mean, led by, very fine captain, as it were, they. Because I'm talking, here's me talking gaily about, it's great to have an event, of all of these things, and we rehearse straight away. I can hear 1,000, brains in here going, well, what about focus and all the rest of it? And we were asking, as China will know from 20 years ago in Hamlet, that we're asking for people to sort of, for everybody, actors, crew, and everything, given the best chance we can of preparation, actors away from the set and crew, ahead of the actors' arrival, but for everybody to be up to speed, but are going to have to be on their, leant forward top game in every kind of consideration. And you do that, and then you put them on a moving train as well. It's, you're giving people a lot of challenges for something also where it will be super exposed. So it was a ballsy effort from everybody that was made you very proud.
Yes, and just a further question about that, which is your Steadicam operator, Stamos. You said you fed him on spinach and lamb for a month.
Spinach and lamb, a lot of honey.
To beef his
he likes
muscles
honey.
up.
He's like a bear.
Yeah. Because there are 2 very long Steadicam shots.
Well, actually, it's one very long steady.
Okay.
The initial shot in the Istanbul station is not Steadicam. It's a Libra head on a dolly.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of Steadicam shots in the chase, especially with Josh through the that viaduct. And there's that fantastic Steadicam shot that is cut into, but it is one single shot throughout the train and up onto the crane that ends the shot. It's intercut with other shots, but that was executed as a single shot. But the shot in the train station is not Steadicam. It is on a, we used a Peewee dolly with a Libra head, and we tracked, Roger operated that on remote wheels. Malcolm Hughes drove the electric vehicle, and Neil was our technician on the Libra head. And that's just dollying around and taking the bumps
When you
out.
say that, that's one of my favourite kind of shots where that's the effect. The effect is, we're smoothly into, or you hope it is, we're smoothly into Istanbul Station. Here's Pierre Michel, who's the conductor, and there's Johnny Depp on the train, and Josh Gad. We pan, here's Penelope Cruz. We're panning, and there's me, and there's Tom Bateman, and there's Marwan Kenzari, and we go up, and then, at the ticket office, there's Daisy Ridley. It's all very nonchalant and everything. And as soon as that tracking vehicle's going, people after, as soon as they pass, they go, get out of the way, moving people around, and kind of running, the background are running like, to suddenly go very smooth in the next part of the shot and everything, and just like a millimetre either side of the screen.
Yeah.
Once the lovely, beautiful shot is gone, it's like, get out of the way! And people are
We were
ADs
throwing
doing all
women
their
and
thing.
children behind us.
Yeah, exactly. And also you do all that, and it's like from his department, there's suddenly reflection, get out of the way! Small person who has who's only come to work today to have a nice time, and you suddenly see all these zealous people, because by that stage, we go, we're doing this in one. We're doing it in one. We get to the end, we bring Michelle Pfeiffer, she comes on, we bring her down, we bring her past Derek Jacobi, we bring her past Penelope Cruz, bring past Leslie Ed, bring past Manuel, Lucy Boynton, Dead, and we end up back up with Johnny Depp and Josh Gad, and they were there the whole time. They were there at the beginning of the shot, they're there at the end, and all of that stuff happened, and it was really... That's one of those ones, like the one I was mentioning Alex did all those years ago, where you start at 8 o'clock, and he looks very, very pale as we start to go, okay, so... Because you can give a general idea of the route, but once you start, it's just that's 2 or 3 hours of going over it, and then you're not going to start getting the first one until somewhere around lunchtime maybe, and then it's lunchtime, so people are a bit hangry, as it were, and when do you call the lunch? Do you do the comedy half hour, or do you do the hour, or... and then, and now the producers start to appear on the set, because we're now, just now it's 2 o'clock. Notice we haven't got one in yet that's gone right. And, and that's when people, standing by them, does it need to be one? I mean, you could, this way, I just think you could do some wipes or whatever. And now I'm getting like that. And then you, it's
The
usually
moustache starts
the mustache starts uncurling. And then you get to take, I don't know, it's usually, we've done a few of these, and it's usually, there's the waves of it, isn't it? Threes, sometimes one is great. One is great, it's got the magic, everybody's excited. You cock up on 2. 3, I've got a funny superstitious Irish thing going on, so take 3, probably. And then 4, 5, 6, 7 is used, 7 you've got something, 7 can probably do it. And then once that doesn't work, oh Christ, we've got to go all the way to 11 because that's the next lucky number. and then suddenly you go, Christ, it can't be 13 or 14, they're such boring numbers, that can't be the one. And I think this one was like something like 17, by which stage you're punch drunk and going, any good, I don't know, whatever. Is he still in it? Is Johnny Depp in it at the end? It's fine if he's in, fine. And it's that old thing of, 8 o'clock, at 8 o'clock in the morning you're making Citizen Kane, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon you're making Starsky and Hutch, and by 6 o'clock, if you're lucky, you're doing a bad episode of Crossroads. Oh, we've all been there.
Just briefly, before we go on to the film stocks, for the people who I'm sure are very interested out there, what glass did you use on the 65mm film cameras, and what did you use on the cameras for the backgrounds?
I'm sorry,
What lenses did you use?
Everyone we had available. Literally, I mean, in the System 65 range. So yes, it was a System 65 that we chose over kind of the older lenses. They were the lenses that Ken had used on Hamlet. They're kind of an intermediate. They're sharp, but they're flattering, etc. But in terms of focal length, pretty much everyone.
Right. Okay, and obviously we have our friends from Kodak here. Hello. And Harris, you shot on 3 different film stocks.
90% was on 5219, the 500 tungsten stock, but we also used for our exteriors some 07, the 250 daylight, and our 50 daylight. I think you can really see it. It's the shot between Daisy and Ken, the Poirot Debenham shot outside. There's just
when they're having coffee.
yes, outside.
Yeah,
there's just something so present and real. That's 65 at 50 daylight. There's almost no grain. It just, I think you really feel like you're the coffee cup there. That's really special. And there were some physical reasons for doing it. You're outside in daylight, but for me, there were also some kind of, that felt like the right place to choose that, to really be there.
And when we were there, that shot is all in camera, so that real train, our real recreated Orient Express, was 15 meters up on the top of a viaduct set. The mountain to the left was built, the tunnel to the far end was built, the workers trying to dig it out were all there. Everything was real. It was an incredible thing. There we are in the Alps of Surrey. And it was very, because you couldn't see, because it was so high, you saw the sky and you saw the Orient Express, and here you saw the mountain, everything, everything was the other side of that, all our kit.
And we got some great skies and clouds.
Amazing skies, yeah.
So can I take you on to, because obviously when I spoke to both of you, it seems like weeks ago now, but it's or a lifetime even, that you were finishing the film off, doing the DI, doing the deliverables, which is quite a process getting through all of that, and obviously you had a particular pipeline that you put down on the film, Harris, so that there was a consistency through the process that you took straight the way through into the DI, and can you tell us about that?
Well, we always wanted to originate on film, but we really, with Ken, we really love a kind of digital intermediate. We love going into Goldcrest, and Rob Pitsy's our grader, and we love just grading digitally. I think that it is kind of, that's the most control you have. We scanned at 8K down to 4K at Photochem, sent them to Goldcrest. We graded at 4K. And it's our first 4K kind of DCP as well, and that looked really
amazing,
different from a 2K DCP. Not just the 65, but 65 with a 4K DCP was fantastic. And we sent that our 4K file to Photochem in Los Angeles. We made a negative, a 70mm negative, and then we went through the photochemical process even after a DI. It's hard to explain, but there's a process there, and some of it is interpreting what is digital to what is film, and some of that is just figuring out kind of, I mean, an example, there were Santa Ana winds in California that created dust in the air, that created white sparkle on the print. It's so, every step of the way was so interesting and bespoke, and in the end, I feel we got a great 4K DCP, we got a great 70mm print, and on top of all of that, something that was very, very new for us, that I think is a really interesting kind of immersive experience, is the Dolby Vision. We got to do a Dolby Vision HDR DCP, and that's also, they're all quite different, they're all from the same world. I think we maintained a consistency, but and I think they're all immersive experiences. My favorite, I have to say, is the 70mm and the Dolby Vision. I think they seem to, although they're one of the oldest versions and the newest versions of cinema presentation, they seem to be the most immersive.
Was that your first HDR experience?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah.
And what are your feelings about HDR?
I love Dolby Vision. I really do. If it's done right and you persist in your kind of the way you treat it filmically. Again, Laurent at Goldcrest did a great lot for us. That they listened. All these people that worked with us, they listened, and they said, you guys love film. what can we take from that and add it to this digital process? And I think that was what made it work. We weren't...
It was a marriage, not a fight. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like to open up the questions to our audience who've sat here very patiently for quite a long time. Surely we have some questions from the audience. We have a gentleman at the back, and there's a lady down here in a green sweater afterwards in the middle here. Could you tell us who you are? Are you a cinematographer, a producer, director?
I'm a director. I'm studying directing. And I was actually wondering, how do you direct yourself? And do you ask any advice, like to cast and crew, to see what your performance? How is it like?
Yeah, certainly this one isn't shy about commenting on things. And I had two people who really specifically helped me on this picture. An American director called Rob Ashford, with whom I've co-directed in the theatre. And he was there for about half the shoot, specifically to look at my performance on the set. And then another actor colleague of mine, Jimmy Yule, who's been a performance consultant on the last couple of pictures we've made, who's also knows me well and can be very honest about what's required. But also we had a very good dialect coach, Marina Tyndall, on this show, who was inevitably, because the accent played such a big part, there was an element of that was from take to take a helpful thing. The key for me in this was preparation. We had months and months and months where we tested accent, moustache, sort of physicality, the clothes, because it seemed clear that you just had to be. I had to be as ready with that as possible, and having tasted it, tested it, said it out loud, walked around, seen the images, felt all of it, responded to footage, to be ready to be directing this cast. But what we usually did then was we'd do their first scenes one by one. So most people arrived and just did a scene with me. And when that happened, they're all very fine actors, very, very, very accomplished film actors. So they're very, very aware of. Technically, it was amazing to watch them, to be perfectly honest. And so I learned a great deal from them. And you end up doing it together. The scene with myself and Johnny Depp and that daft pudding, which we ate way too much of across a day and a half, it was full of improvisation. He was very free with that kind of thing, but also sort of playfulness. So I had a lot of help. I practiced a lot, I prepared a lot, and then I had a lot of help.
So where's the gentleman with the microphone? Are you up? You're up there. There's a lady down here with a green top. Just down here. If you make yourself known, whilst the microphone's wending its way to her, do you possess that little thing that protects the?
I've got it.
You've got it, have you? Okay.
In fact, he wears it at the weekend sometimes.
Yeah,
I find it a bit weird, but it's
Harris, I'm sure it looks gorgeous.
Looks great on you.
Yes, very right. Wonderful. Yes, this lady over here.
I think I'm on. I've walked a few miles with Ken. Well, I walked through A and B stage with Ken. And my question isn't to Ken, it's a China Ken. My question is to Harris, actually. On Hamlet, we mostly shot on a 50mm as our wide, and our close-ups were about a 150. And I think Dad used to give me about 5.6, if I was lucky. I was just wondering, with your day scenes, what were your T-stops? And I applaud your crew, I applaud your film, it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. I think Dad would have been really proud of Ken, another 70mm outing. So I just want to know what your stops were.
Thank you. Well, Alex was a huge inspiration and so supportive early on in my career. It's can't say enough good words. We shot predominantly at a T4 for our interiors. Our wides were predominantly at 29, not a 50. A 50 was our kind of mid-shot to close-up. We rarely went above 100. So we stayed slightly wider, but we had more confined spaces. It's all relative to the space. So within our space, a 29 actually looked almost even like a 60. You're always struggling to get further back in a train. So we were slightly wider, and our f-stop was around about a 4 and probably about 5-6 outside.
Hopefully that answers your question. Very good, very good. Do we have further questions from the audience? Yes. There's a gentleman here at the front, and then secondly, the gentleman right at the back. We'll take the question after this first one.
First, if I could say congratulations. It's a wonderful film and looks wonderful.
Thank you.
One shot that really stood out for me was that overhead shot of the discovery of the body, where the camera moves around, but intriguingly doesn't show you the body or the room itself. And I just wondered how that came about.
Ken?
The pair of us, of course, and many other people, because there are a few issues to solve there. The inspiration came from, frankly, from Dial M for Murder, Alfred Hitchcock's thriller with Ray Milland and Grace Kelly, and I think it's about a third of the way through that film when Ray Milland has decided that he will blackmail a former associate to kill his wife. Hitchcock suddenly jumps to a sort of bird's eye view for much longer than you might expect, and it's very unsettling. And it suddenly makes a film that's been shot absolutely on a relatively usual horizontal plane in a studio set of a London townhouse, suddenly becomes sort of forensic and a bit sort of dirty and sinister, and feels very, very creepy. One of the things that we were constantly trying to do was suggest to an audience. We lived with the idea that people would feel, that some people would feel that the story would be known, and yet we knew that we were starting in a different way. Neither the book nor Sidney Lumet's great film do not start in Jerusalem as we do, and by the same token, we felt if we could, frankly, steal that very brilliant piece of unsettling directing from Mr. Hitchcock, that we could also put the audience in the same position as the passengers on the train, which is that they now know something is up, but they don't know what it is, and neither do our audience. And several people who saw it said to me, I literally wanted to push the camera up because I just wanted to see whether he was there, whether Johnny Depp was there, whether he was really dead in this new version, how violent it was, or whether, because we're not seeing it, it's not there at all. And at the same time also feeling this, what had been champagne and linen and wonderful landscapes is like an operating theatre with people and shapes, and you can't quite see what they're saying. So suddenly what had been a warm and welcoming environment is now a place where you can't see everything, and you don't quite know what people are doing, and it feels as though somebody else, some other objective and potentially scary individual is at hand. That was the idea behind it. And then I said to the maestro here, so how do we do that?
And even that is by the by in a way, because if you think about it, that was a bold choice from Ken, and we did no coverage. But if you had gone into coverage, you're talking about 4 people like this. Yeah. Where do you put a camera? Who do you cut to? You then go into this kind of Dante's Inferno of infinite possibilities, none of which are cinematic, all of which might fall into a kind of, lack of a better word, a TV-ish coverage, i.e., and that's not to say anything bad about TV, but we use it as a word to describe things where they're just functional as opposed to, or time restricted, etc., as opposed to making a choice. It was a very bold decision, and one that we stuck to in a way, and we had no other choice. But it also got us, it was a get out of jail card at the same time. You could actually be creative. And again, I think it worked doubly well in 65. One of the things we didn't notice until the end is that the filaments in the kind of period lamp that you see, the little light bulb in there, you could actually see it kind of move. That's the kind of guttural thing that you get from 65 that is so hard to explain in words or in kind of pixels or anything that's in that way. You just get a very experience, you get an experience out of this, and you get a sensory, and kind of feeling out of watching a film in this way.
And the audience are watching what he watches, and that was definitely a day on which very well-intentioned producers walked over, trying to strike a calm pose. Saying, well, you're going to cover this at all? Is there going to be, the clues? You're going to get the clues at all? Clues will be good. It was shot of like the pipe cleaner or the watch and everything. And, it was, I said, no, they're all there. They're all there. You'll see them. You won't see, no disrespect, big fan of the show, but you won't see the CSI shows, the shots. So I won't race through the fibers of a pipe cleaner and down into its thingy, because suddenly I'm taking you somewhere else. Then that's a different form, and that
commendable, but
yeah, but brilliant. I mean, dazzling. It also, I didn't want to compete with that as well, because once you're in that, you think, Christ, well, they've done all those shots brilliantly. Now we've got to, not sort of trust it, whereas it felt like we could trust it, basically.
I thought that the shot of Johnny Depp moribund, covered in blood, and that slow zoom in. He's inverted as well. He's upside. He's the wrong way up. It's wonderful. There was a gentleman at the back, right in the very middle. You have the microphone. Great.
Yes. Can you hear me? Cool. I wanted to know how it is to act and direct at the same time. If you could give your, I don't know if it's advice or just general experience of.
Wonderful question.
Well, it's you have if you can hold your nerve. It's one of the things that was so sort of wrapped up in the approach to the film was that Poirot's sort of neatness, his obsessive-compulsive desire for balance, this man who almost sort of can't bear, it's almost distressing to him to have, the difference being, he doesn't mind stepping in donkey poo, it's the one foot in donkey poo that throws him, so he needs to have the second, and you feel it almost, there'd be a nervous breakdown if he couldn't somehow, with this gift that sees all this capacity for human frailty, somehow in whatever way he can, being controlled so that he can, I don't know, at least make breakfast safe, get 2 eggs the same size, and although it seems peculiar, I'm sure quite a few of us recognize what he calls his little originalities. So there's something about Poirot's personality that then translated into some of the ways we've been talking about shooting the film, which in themselves had a certain obsessive compulsive quality. So the neat freak in Poirot affected the way I was directing, I think, and vice versa. So in this particular case, the marriage between the two was good. And one of the things that you were able to also, if you're acting and directing, you can establish a way of being, a way that the rhythm of the day is going to go, that can have a positive influence on the way things go. But you get the chance to, as long as you're, it's not always a comfortable experience, because obviously with something like this, the key thing is I had to be, do a very good job as Poirot, otherwise there's no point in doing both jobs. But there was something about the way the way the two things worked that was helpful. One other thing I'd say about it that I've learned over the years is that with something like this, where there's a formality to the subject matter, what I'd like to try and catch is as much rawness as possible. And what I learned on a TV show called Wallander that I did here, at a time when I was finding acting quite difficult, I'd find it quite stressful and anxious making. My way of dealing with it eventually was to just accept that and photograph me when I was feeling that way. So I began with Wallander to produce a scene where if we had a three-handed scene that was a couple of pages, I'd start with my close-up, especially if it was a lot of dialogue or if it was something that was quite sort of emotional. And I'd do that at the beginning of the day. Everybody in the crew knew that was going to be in the movie or in the TV show. And that also played out with Poirot, is that somehow you start to accept the fact that it's always going to be problematic, but actually what you want to capture that flaw, you want to capture that edge, you want to capture that sort of vibration. So between those two things, the process of doing both things was A, a privilege, and B, something to sort of just go with. Not always comfortable, not always smooth, and you were buying that, in fact encouraging it not always to be comfortable, smooth, or easy, but as best as you could, real.
Can I add that there's also a huge amount of sacrifice in the way Ken worked? An example is the denouement scene at the end, where Poirot is basically giving his verdict on who the murderers are. That was the first thing we shot, and Ken performed that, and we shot it on Ken months before we ever shot any other actor. He performed to cardboard cutouts, and did this so that he could give his all as a director to his other cast members, who didn't have any lines, by the way, really. And there were 12 of them. But there's a certain, that's called, I think that's called directorial sacrifice.
I was slightly haunted by, there's a doco about the 1974 film where Jacqueline Bisset, is a very, very terrific gal. I had the pleasure of working with on my first picture. Anyway, she was in that show, and they said, what was it like filming the denouement sequence? 10 pages of illumination from Albert Finney's brilliant Poirot. They said, what was it like filming that? She said, excruciating. And they said, why? She said, we just had to listen to that bloody speech again and again and again. So I also, it was partly that I didn't want to do that. I also knew that when I did come to do it, of course I did have to do it for them and with them and in shots that included them when they all arrived. It was a bit of a hairy moment for me, because it couldn't be more judgment. It was like being on Agatha Christie's The X Factor when you come on to do the denouement scene. What did you think, Michelle? What did you think, Judy? And they're all sitting there. So I was also, it was kind of, it was canny, I think, to do my side of it up front as well.
And sacrificial.
Whatever you.
And actually, as Harris, seeing that your director is also the lead in the film, from a cinematographer's point of view, how do you legislate for that? How do you mitigate that?
Well, we also have a procedure that we work with Ken, so that we're rehearsed enough, and we. Michael Rouse is a stand-in that we use that knows kind of, so that we can block scenes that would include Poirot without having to use Ken there. There's
with a very good actor and someone who knows the lines, not simply a stand-in, photographic stand-in, but somebody. Although our stand-ins were also excellent and ready to be quite front-footed in that way, but he was really looked like me, got the tash and everything, and was
part of Ken's theatre group as well, so there's a relationship there. That allowed us to step behind the camera, work together, go through the shots, rehearse them, and of course, as always, Ken super rehearsed and ready for jumping in on the other side. But that, I think, all that prep from Ken's point of view gave us the opportunity to work as if it was someone else. It was really remarkable.
The other thing,
hard work.
Yeah, we had hard work for these guys, because the other thing we do in order to keep that performance alive, and because I had the luxury of doing it, because I was the boss, as it were, that's when you'd be going, you'd get to the end of the scene and you go, keep running, get back, I'm going to do this, I'm going to move in, and you could see them go, moving, you didn't move in the last time, oh Christ, away. There would be and that's in order to kind of sometimes keeping the camera running and going back. We know all these sort of
even things
techniques.
like saying, I'd shout out eyes, and that meant that Ken blinked, and let's do it again. But we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
We
that
don't
was
have
a funny
to,
take. It was during that denouement I found that with every line I said, I blinked unknowingly, unwittingly. I just literally didn't know I was doing it. But it was like sort of folding the line in. So I looked at it and said to Harris, who looked a bit nervous at the time, I said, literally say eyes every time I do this, because I don't want a shot where I'm doing this, but I'll need to be told.
And we've done it enough time that it doesn't it's a family, and it doesn't get in the way of.
But it was funny. It was like watching Wimbledon or something. I'd be doing a lot of serious acting. Eyes from the Cypriot eyes. A couple of times I go, no, I didn't do it then. Oh, come on. Yes, you did. All right, keep running. I'm sure I didn't blink, Harris.
Do we have any other questions from the yes, this lady here. whilst the microphone is coming to you, if you hold your hand up, the microphone will find its way to you. Can I ask, who has the magic cane? So Faris has got the moustache.
He's got the cane as well.
He's got the cane as well.
He's often he goes to his own murder mystery evenings as Poirot. Yeah.
Harris,
that's another thing. You don't want to see those videos.
Okay, yes. This lady, I've just lost her.
Hi.
Oh,
I wanted to ask where you started with the production design and rebuilding the train in the studio, and how you made it work for the blocking and for the camera movement.
The production design, Jim Clay did a fantastic job with this production design. He's a great combination. He's very imaginative, but he's also technically very skilled and skillful, as his supervising art director Dominic. And first of all, we looked at all. Once we'd been through that practical route, could we shoot on real Orient Express? No, we probably couldn't. We went on the train. Tough location scout that was, and we determined that we needed to make, for these cameras, we needed to make the corridors a little wider, and we worked out, could we get away with that without giving the game away? And we felt as though we could. We were at Longcross Studios, so we knew that we actually could have, as we did, the ability to create a whole mile of track, which we did. So, for instance, in the last shot of the movie, it's all real. As Harris said, although we cut into it for creative reasons, in the end, we did one Steadicam shot where the Stamos went through the train and then went high, and that's the real train. It's a real station we built. It's a real track. It's all the real actors on it, all done in real time at Longcross, with some digital enhancement at the end for the vista, but not much. And so we looked at every design for the Orient Express and created our own version of it. Some were more or less heavily furnished. I'm a little anti-Tasley table lamps, so hence the sort of flanged, sort of V-shaped, more Laliki kind of things. And we found, with consultation with the companies who variously run that train, the designs that would allow us to believe that it was authentic, or at least in the spirit of the train of the time. We cleaned it out a little more. We wanted it to be a little less cluttered than some iterations of the train had been. And then we had the train with the 5 carriages. Then we had a Poirot carriage, a compartment, and a Ratchet compartment. So, for instance, with the overhead shot, that was 2 compartments for that shot rather than the whole train, because we could take the roof off that and walls flew easily on that. Otherwise, we tried to recreate as faithfully as we could, with just a little bit bigger. So as much of it could be continuous as possible. Our sort of hybrid version of the train as it existed in 1934, and everything was designed and built there. We shot in New Zealand, and we shot some of the exteriors in Switzerland and France for a train upon which we modelled the actual engine or tender. That was a mountain train, so it went higher and was more powerful for getting up to those heights. We cheat a bit with the height in terms of how far a train could go, and we recreated that back home. And then for the light, really, for the Jerusalem section, we went to Malta, where we built in a found location the Wailing Wall, and but everything else there was sort of in camera.
So, unfortunately, the sands of time are drawn to a close. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to close that. I just want to ask, what flavour was the cake?
It was a kind of caramelly chocolate thing. The actual cake chosen by me, the flavours chosen by Johnny Depp, who announced that he would probably eat more of it. We did do a whole. There was a whole improvised scene between Johnny Depp and Josh Gad, where given that he says the line about Josh Gad's character, Josh Gad says about Johnny's character, he ate more steak than anyone I've ever met. We did an improvised scene where they ate more steak than anyone's ever eaten, and I wish that was on the DVD, but I think it's full of foul improvisations. But I can tell you, both can eat a steak like a wild thing, as well as a pudding.
Well, it's a wonderful whodunit. Not just the film, but actually these two who done it.
Boom.
But also there are many, many collaborators out there, because we know filmmaking is a wonderful collaborative experience. Anyway, please give a big hand to Sir Kenneth Brannagh and Zambarloukos. Thank you. And thank you everybody for coming. Thank you very much.